New year, same chaos. As aspiring Bond villain Elon Musk continues to set the agenda in Westminster, will Britain finally get its moment of reckoning in the gang rape scandal that has blighted our northern towns? The issue has become something of a political dividing line. We talk to both sides. I'm Harry Cole, and this is Never Mind the Ballots. Joining me first is a man who says there should be a new national inquiry into the scandal. Shadow Home Secretary Philp writes in today's Sun, last night's shameful vote exposed Labour's lack of both a backbone and anything resembling a moral compass. Philp, big words. When did you personally decide there should be a new inquiry into a scandal that's been going on for close to 2 decades?
Well, I think what really tipped it for me was when I saw Oldham Council themselves, as an organisation, were pleading with the government to run a proper nationally led investigation. They wrote that letter last July. Jess Phillips replied to it in October, but it only became public, I think, just over a week ago. And when I saw that the local authorities themselves in the affected area felt that they couldn't investigate it themselves, they needed the government to get involved, that is when I realised personally that a national inquiry was needed.
And it had nothing to do with the world's richest man and his 211 million followers on X, once known as Twitter, the company that he bought and runs and owns and games the algorithm to put his own tweets at the very top of it. Nothing to do with that. It was all a story that you read about a letter.
So look, I mean, Conservatives have been pursuing this issue for 10 years. It was back in 2014 that Theresa May initiated the first inquiry into, I think it was Rochdale. Again in 2015, the ICSA inquiry. Sajid Javid, 2018, gathering evidence on the ethnicity of the perpetrators. And Rishi Sunak in 2023 launching the Grooming Gangs Task Force. So the Conservatives have a 10-year track record of fighting this issue.
We can pick at that in a minute, but when one Oldham councillor wrote a couple of years ago to the government, the Home Office refused an investigation. There has been ample opportunity over the last 14 years to have a specific inquiry into grooming that your government didn't do.
Well, that was a request by one individual councillor. The ICSA inquiry, which was a national inquiry, was still running at that time, and that was initiated by Conservatives. Look, the other thing that struck me, actually, looking at this whole episode, is that over decades, this has been covered up and swept under the carpet, going right back to Anne Cryer, the Labour MP for Keighley, who raised this in the early 2000s. She was, people tried to silence her, people mainly in the Labour Party. We saw Simon Danczuk come out just a few days ago and say that when he was the Labour MP for Rochdale, the then chair of the Parliamentary Labour Party tried to silence him. Of course, Sarah Champion, as recently as 2017, was forced out of the Labour front bench because she spoke out on this issue. So we can see this being swept under the carpet, often by the Labour Party. And last night's vote in Parliament was just the latest instalment in that sweeping under the carpet approach they've taken. And actually what Keir Starmer said last Monday, when he said that raising this issue was a far-right bandwagon, was wrong, it was despicable. And again, that forms part of a pattern of behaviour where the left try and sweep this under the carpet.
Well, Labour will be here after you to defend all that. But I want to talk about the Tories and whether they're using this as, you got routed in July. There's no denying that. You're down to a rump. You could barely muster 100 MPs last night on your own side in what has been the biggest vote so far, I'd say, of Kemi Badenoch's leadership. Are you just using this as a stick to beat the government round the head with, as an opportunity, seeing that people are genuinely angry out there and kind of playing a bit of politics with it?
No, this is about this is about standing up for victims. And as I say, the Conservatives have a track record going back to 2014, a 10-year track record dealing with this. The Grooming Gangs Task Force was set up by Rishi a couple of years ago. It led to 550 arrests. So we've got a real track record on this. And this is an issue that needs sorting out. We're saying we need to get to the truth. That's not about politics. It's about standing up for victims. And by the way, Harry, there is plenty of things we've got to beat the government with. The bond market melting down, taxes going up, winter fuel cancelled.
You'll get your chance to talk about all of that.
We are not short of sticks to beat the government with.
Let's stick on this for the moment, though. I mean, Elon Musk, has he been a help or a hindrance to your cause on this? I mean, obviously, he has put rocket boosters, quite literally, underneath this story. He has been tweeting about it, I think, more than 200 times. He's almost manically pushing the story. Is he a help or a hindrance to the cause of victims?
Well, I think he certainly raised the salience of the issue and probably got it a wider hearing than it would have got otherwise, if we're completely honest. That's probably the effect he's had. Now, he has on occasion used language.
Well, yeah, I mean, calling Jess
Philp
Phillips a rape genocide apologist, calling for Keir Starmer to go to... Should Keir Starmer be in prison?
Yeah, no, of course not. No, I don't condone that language. That language is wrong. I don't condone that at all. But I think it is reasonable that he raises the issue in general terms, and he has raised the salience. But I definitely don't support that.
But he seems to be sort of pivoting away from Nigel Farage, who he's gone off because he wouldn't support Tommy Robinson. And now, I looked at his Twitter feed this morning. He's picking up Kemi Badenoch. Is he an ally? Is he helpful?
Well, I mean, look, I don't really know.
Would the Tories take Elon cash, Elon money?
He has his own opinion. Obviously, he's very independently minded. He'll express his own views. Look, we'll do our job here domestically in the UK with the opposition. It's our job to hold the government to account. That is what we're doing.
Last night, was a bit of a stunt because it was a second reading of a wider bill. You managed to get it your amendment just about in scope to tack it on, but there was no way the government were going to play ball on that because it would have kiboshed the entire schools and children's wellbeing bill. What next? Is this a flash in the pan, a bit of a quiet New Year's news cycle? Jump on this. How are you going to pursue your goal of a national inquiry beyond political stunts?
No, we're certainly... Well, first of all, a vote in Parliament is not a political stunt. Harry, we used the first opportunity available to put this to a vote on the floor
essentially
of Parliament. But look, as soon as we get an opportunity to put down a specific amendment to a bill, perhaps at report stage, where you can put down an amendment just on this topic, which is the ideal way of doing it, my expectation is we will take that opportunity. We're going to keep campaigning on this issue. We're not going to give up. We're going to... And there was a bit of a hint yesterday, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Maybe Labour are thinking of a U-turn on this, because they must have been sitting there knowing they're letting down victims.
Well, I'd be fair. I mean, seeing the MPs for Oldham, for Rochdale, for Rotherham march through the division lobbies, I suspect they will get some people. But what does an inquiry actually look like? Look, there was, you can dispute the fact that the Alexis J inquiry took too long, was too broad, and wasn't focused on this issue. But what does an inquiry actually look like? Are we really going to have another sort of 5 years, multi-million pounds spent, lawyers getting rich, victims, dragged all through this again, perhaps unwillingly in some cases? How are you going to have a short, sharp inquiry that is going to have any meaningful effect on this?
Yes, so
beyond a political stunt.
Yeah, look. So on the J report, that only covered 6 of the towns affected, and it didn't really go very deeply into the gang issue. So the J report, was a good start, but it's definitely not enough. So what do we need? It's got to be short, sharp, and focused. We definitely can't have a 4 or 5 year inquiry. That just takes far too long. I'd also say it is possible to implement the recommendations of the previous inquiry and prosecute these vile perpetrators.
So essentially, it's a show trial then?
No, it's not a show trial.
I think the point of an inquiry is to find out an answer to a question you don't know the answer to. We know what happened. These vile Pakistani heritage rape gangs were exploiting British children, and were allowed to do so seemingly under the nose of the councils, the schools, the police.
So I'll tell you what
we know what happened.
I want to know which public officials, which councils, which police...
So you want essentially a show trial?
I want to know who covered this up. I want to know who failed these victims by being negligent, by disbelieving their accounts. I want to see a day of reckoning for those people who did not do their job properly.
That's not an inquiry, though. That's a show trial.
No, it's not a show trial. It's getting to the truth about what happened. It's finding out if there are other towns where this happened that we don't even know about sitting here today. And the problem with some of the local inquiries, which apparently is now the government policy, a local inquiry in Oldham, Keir Starmer mentioned this local inquiry in Manchester. Those local inquiries generally do not have the legal powers to summon witnesses. They can't take evidence under oath. They can't requisition evidence. And Harry, in fact, the chairs of the Manchester inquiry, which Starmer referred to at PMQs this week, actually resigned last year because they didn't have the powers to get the evidence, and public bodies were still, as recently as 6 months ago, covering things
hand
up.
on heart, honestly believe that the Labour Party, as Kemi Badenoch basically said at PMQs yesterday, do you hand on heart believe that the reason that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are blocking national inquiries because they genuinely fear that the Labour Party will be implicated?
They want, I think, potentially, yes. We've seen Sarah Champion, as recently as 2017, being drummed off the Labour front bench because she raised this issue. We've had Simon Danchuk telling us he was told to shut up by the chair of the Labour Party. We had Keir Starmer...
Very big accusation to be making.
We had Keir Starmer, as recently as Monday of this week, saying it was far right to be raising a far right bandwagon to be raising the issue. Although by Wednesday he seemed to be backing off that. So there is a long-standing culture going back decades on the left to try and brush this stuff under the carpet, and that is not good enough. That is not good enough, Harry.
Let's talk about let's broaden out a bit away from this this incredibly toxic issue. How is Kemi Badenoch doing? As she's been in the job a few months now.
Oh,
this is the first time she's really sort of had any real cut through. Do you think she's doing all right?
I think she is. Look, she's been in the job about 8 weeks, and that included Christmas. And I think she's doing a good job. Look, she's first of all, the shadow cabinet are united. We had a meeting as recently as
Publicly,
Tuesday.
I'd say they're united.
Publicly and privately, actually. I think she's doing a good job. I think she has a real ability to communicate that is quite rare in politics. Some people have it, like Boris had it, and people like Bill Clinton had it. But it's quite a rare.
She's a new Bill Clinton.
I think I think she has the potential to be the new Margaret Thatcher.
Really?
I think our nation is in a very similar situation today to where it was in 1975, with a Labour government sending us sort of over an economic cliff edge, and we need someone with dynamism and vision to rescue our country.
Is it really credible? So, as revealed in today's Sun, Kemi Badenoch basically said it's a 3-year plan to turn things around and get the Tories back fighting fit after their routing. You've obviously got the problems of reform on the right. You've got a massive Labour majority to your left. But essentially, she's saying, look, spend the next year detoxifying the party, essentially rebuilding trust, then presenting a credible alternative government, and then it won't be until 27 that we really get the meat and flesh of the policies. Is it really credible to spend the next 2 years basically chucking rocks?
No, I think we're going to get some substance before then, obviously. It's not going to be a complete vacuum for 2 years. But what we're not going to do is publish an entire manifesto like tomorrow.
Sure, but you're going to need some policies.
You know what, Harry? We started that process in late November, 3 or 4 weeks ago, when Kemi and I gave speeches. I can't remember if you were there or not. And we talked about immigration.
Yeah,
and
you apologised.
We did. We said there have been very serious mistakes made. But we also started pointing to the future direction. We said there will be a legally binding hard cap, way lower than current levels, right? So that was a new thing. We are going to have a Rwanda-style deterrent where people that come here illegally get kicked out very rapidly, return somewhere else, so they don't bother crossing in the first place. We saw that work in Australia. We're going to be a lot tougher with migrants and benefits.
These are all things that Robert Jenrick was saying to do in the leadership election, though, and you voted against him, and Kemi voted against him. Sort of tacitly accepting he was right.
No, I didn't vote against Robert. I voted for Kemi. They're both good. They're both good friends. And so we are going to see, I think, some more ideas like those fleshed out a bit. We're not going to publish a full manifesto, but we are going to have some ideas in the coming months. And look, I think you've got Labour who are completely failing, whacking up taxes, whacking pensioners, whacking farmers, whacking working people, giving away islands. In fact, paying to give away islands. In India,
they'll be here. We talk about Labour when Labour are here, but
and
we talk about the Tories now.
Then you've got Reform, who don't have, who won't have detailed and credible plans. They're good at slogans, but I don't think they're good at real solutions. So I think there is going to be
the party of Stop the Boats. I think that's a bit rich.
Well, you're going to hear proper plans from us between now and the next election,
but not before 27.
No, you'll hear plenty before then. Don't worry.
All right, well, you apologise for migration. The leader of the opposition told the shadow cabinet. I'm told that there'll be more apologies forthcoming for other failings of the Tories in over 14 years. What's next on the sort of grovel agenda?
Well, look, I'm not going to obviously speak for Kemi, but look, I would like to see a future Conservative government get immigration down a lot. I'd like to see a zero tolerance approach.
Where would you put the cap? 100,000?
No, I'm not going to give you a number. But
well, they said there'd be a numerical cap.
I said that's right, a hard numerical cap, legally binding, and I tell you this, it'll be a lot lower than the current levels of net immigration.
Well, I hope so, because it's 1 million people came
and it'll be a lot lower even than the OBR forecast, which at the budget was about 350,000. It'll be a lot lower than both of those numbers. And you know what? I also want to see a plan to get taxes down, because we are being crippled. Let's talk about
the economy. Rachel Reeves is due in China this weekend. Bond markets are having a bit of a blip. The pound is going the wrong way. Not, dare I add, as low as perhaps when you were Chief Secretary of the Treasury in 2022, but it's looking a little kind of October 2022-ish in the markets. Why do you think that suddenly, with long-term borrowing as high as it was under Liz Truss,
higher,
higher just, and the pound going the wrong way, gloomy economic numbers, why is Rachel Reeves not having the Truss treatment?
Well, that's a really good question. As you say, bond yields are higher, meaning bond prices are lower than they were at the point that Kwasi Kwarteng got sacked.
So you're saying fire the Chancellor?
Years ago. I'm just observing.
Should the Chancellor be fired?
I'm just observing. Well, I think she's doing a terrible job. I think the whole government should be fired, frankly, including Rachel Reeves, because they've jacked up taxes, they've crushed pensioners, they're crushing farmers, they're crushing businesses with their high taxes, and this is the result because the bond market can see that our economy is being squashed by this Labour government, and that is why our bonds are getting routed.
Long-term borrowing costs are up across Europe as well. I mean, surely isn't this just a sort of a pre sort of Trump jitter?
No, it's got to do with Trump.
Well, I mean, they're expecting tariffs and tariffs to hit European economies in the coming months. Isn't this just
Harry, our interest rates are about here in the UK about 2% higher than they are in Europe. Our bond prices are being driven down and yields up.
And you genuinely believe that's because of the budget?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the economic outlook for our economy is now much, much worse than it was before the budget because she is saddling businesses with tax. It's going to cause job losses. It's going to cause wages to be suppressed. It's going to slow economic growth.
Should the Chancellor be scurrying off to China this weekend when the bond markets are in the turmoil they're in?
I don't. I think
so. She should cancel the trip.
She should be staying in the UK, fixing the mess that her budget created.
Chris Philp, thank you very much. Welcome to your first debut on Never Mind the Ballots.
I hope the first of many.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Don't go away. We'll talk to the other side next. Let's see what Labour have to say for themselves. Joining us now, Labour's Mike Tapp, the MP for Dover and Deal, and what colleagues have described as a rising star on the Labour benches, which I'm not sure is a good thing or a bad thing for your future career prospects. But welcome to Never Mind the Ballots. Mike, look, last night's vote, you had the MPs for Rochdale, for Rotherham, for Oldham, all of these towns blighted by decades of horrific scandal, whipped by the Prime Minister to vote against an inquiry. How did that make you feel in that division lobby? So
firstly, you're right, it is horrific, and that there's no divide on that. Everyone agrees that we've got to get on top of this problem and deal with these vile paedophiles, and I've got experience of that in the past with the National Crime Agency, and we're fully committed to that. Now, on this vote, there were two reasons that we took this line. The first reason, we've already had a lengthy inquiry, which ended...
Broad inquiry that encompassed some parts of the, some towns, 6 towns, I believe. 50 towns have been blighted by this issue. We don't know if it's still going on now. That inquiry was a much broader inquiry.
So you're right in saying it's broad, but we've got to look at what Professor Jay has said as well, which is that this doesn't need a further inquiry. And actually, it's time for action now. And that's really important because there are numerous recommendations from that report that need implementing. And the second reason that I was going to come to for voting for the bill last night or against the amendment is we need to get those amendments in. And within the bill, that this would have completely wrecked and destroyed our measures to protect children. So it's about action.
So another day, another vote, a different piece of legislation, or perhaps a sort of an opposition motion, something like that. You wouldn't necessarily vote against a new inquiry.
So what we've said at the moment is we don't need a new inquiry.
Well, the Prime Minister said yesterday open-minded.
Absolutely, and that doesn't mean that in the future there's never going to be a national inquiry, right? That doesn't rule that out. But if we're putting in, or the Conservatives are putting in legislation that's going to destroy a bill that will help children across the board, including children's safety, of course we're going to vote that through. And actually it makes me really angry that this has been used as a dividing factor in Parliament when it's really clear why we're voting.
But surely there's a long overdue fact. Look, this issue has been going on, except for decades. It's sort of dripped out slowly, and so there hasn't been that moment of national anger and national reckoning. Do you think it's a good thing, though, that we're finally actually having a pretty stark, honest conversation about what the Leader of the Opposition says is one of the biggest scandals in British history?
I think there's been ongoing anger against paedophiles, paedophile rings, grooming gangs.
Then why haven't we talked about it in the same way?
Well, I think we have spoken about it. And actually, what we've seen from the previous government is lethargy, because there were recommendations that they were not implementing. And the bill yesterday that the voting against the amendment has enabled a bill to go through to a second reading, which does protect children. And that's really important. And Keir Starmer's got a record of protecting children. As DPP, he reopened investigations into child grooming gangs.
For whatever reason, I think Keir Starmer has a good case has a good case to make for his actions as DPP. But he managed to slightly sort of overcook that on Monday by basically saying that people calling for a new inquiry were jumping on a far right bandwagon. That's not helpful language, is it?
Look, there's many people that I speak to who are not on the far right who want to see paedophiles and grooming gangs.
So why did he say it's a far-right bandwagon?
Including me, by the way.
Yeah, and me. But why does he say it's a far-right bandwagon?
The important thing now that we're looking at is that we are putting through that legislation to protect children. That's what the Labour Party are doing. And the Conservatives were actually attempting to block that. And I find that infuriating, to be quite honest with you.
But so just to be clear, you're not ruling out another inquiry. There could be another inquiry, and on another day, in another vote, Labour MPs might vote for another inquiry.
Well, I mean, look, these are hypotheticals, and what I've got in
we
front
quite
of
like
me,
hypotheticals.
what I've got as a backbench MP in front of me is a bit of legislation that I did not want to see wrecked because it protects children. The Conservatives were trying to wreck that, and essentially destroy the chances of us protecting children, and that's not acceptable, and that makes me really angry.
Are you grateful to Elon Musk for highlighting this issue and putting it on the news agenda?
Look, Elon Musk is a very talented man. You know, he could get humans to Mars.
Yeah, I mean, the guy literally pulls rockets out of space with chopsticks, right?
And I think it's really impressive what he's done in the past, and also with Tesla and moving forward that electric vehicle initiative. He's well and truly entitled to his opinions, and it's as simple
including
as that,
that
really.
Keir Starmer should be in prison.
He's entitled to his opinions. That
Jess
doesn't, by the way.
Jess Phillips is a rape genocide apologist.
These are disgusting comments which we have to call out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's well and truly entitled.
Some of your colleagues are clamouring for a harder line to be taken on websites like X, and legislation currently on the statute book and possibly being tightened up. The online safety bill.
Yeah.
Would you like to see comments like rape genocide apologists being censored?
What I'd like to see from Elon Musk, if he's watching,
I'm sure he does. He doesn't miss an episode, does Elon?
I very much hope he is that he works with politicians, because he is the owner of one of the most powerful social media companies on the planet. And actually, he can help us, combat things like child grooming, because that is often where this.
Are you hopeful that he's going to be an ally to this government? He wants to bang up the Prime Minister.
I very much hope that he'll work with politicians to take on this vile, child grooming and paedophilia.
But do you think that the Prime Minister should just sit there and take it? I mean, look, who is this guy? An aspiring Bond villain, world's richest man. If he didn't exist, you could barely write him in as a credible character in world politics. Yet the Prime Minister sort of seems to, apart from Monday, basically accusing him of, not even naming him, but saying he shouldn't spread disinformation. He's basically taking the punches, isn't he? Shouldn't he be coming out and saying, who are you?
Look, what we've got in Keir Starmer, Harry, is a serious,
a man that throws some punches?
A serious Prime Minister.
And but a serious Prime Minister with a record-breaking unpopularity in just 6 months.
We've now got stability in
Have
this
we?
country
Look at the bond
under
market.
Keir Starmer, which means we can govern over the next few years and deliver. So he probably doesn't want to get sucked into
It doesn't feel that
media.
stable right now, does it? Were you expecting to be 6 months into government facing Liz Truss levels of borrowing and a tanking pound?
Look, what we've seen from Rachel Reeves in the budget is laying those foundations for growth, and that's hopefully what we'll see over the coming years. And that enables more money to go into our public services. And by the way, we're already seeing that with investment in the NHS, bringing down waiting lists from 18 months to 18 weeks for treatment. That's really important. That's going to save lives, Harry. That's what people want to see.
Chris Philp sat in that chair moments ago and said that Rachel Reeves, during this market turmoil, shouldn't be going to China, shouldn't be leaving the country. Do you agree with that? Should she be staying here and sorting the markets out?
Look, we will, of course, be negotiating and speaking with international partners and international governments to ensure that we're getting the best deals for the people here.
Yeah, but last time a Chancellor left the country, when borrowing was at this level, was Kwasi Kwarteng in October 2022, and he flew home and got fired. Should the Chancellor be leaving the country this week when there's turmoil in the market?
I'm convinced that the Chancellor will travel if it's going to benefit the people in this country. That's what this is about. It's about delivering for the people of Britain.
Kowtowing to the Chinese? How's that sit with you as a man that knows his way around the British security infrastructure? It's definitely a change in tone towards China, who are one of the biggest threats this country faces.
So I see that there's no doubt we have to be cautious of the Chinese, but there's no getting away from the fact that they are a growing economy. And of course, we've got to be engaging with them in order to deliver for the people here. And that's what's most important.
Let's talk about another issue that's obviously massively important to you. As the MP for Dover, you could not be more on the front line of the small boats crisis. President Macron jets in for, I don't know what he's going to be fed at Chequers tonight, but he's having dinner with the Prime Minister. And clearly here to collect his cheque. £500 million a year we're paying the French. To stop small boats. Look at the statistics. Every day that there are crossings, we see the same more people coming over than the French are stopping on the beaches. Is that £500 million value for money for the constituents of Dover?
So it's important that we work with international partners.
Yeah, sure. But are we getting value for money there?
That begins with the French and ensuring that they've got the capabilities to stop boats from launching is really important. But this goes further. This goes further. What we've got to remember is we've inherited open borders. So 400 crossed in 2018. over 150,000 have crossed since. The majority of that was on the Conservatives' watch. So we have
but I mean,
inherited...
the rates are up for this year and have gone up since July.
We haven't, but not on what we call red days, where it's viable for crossings because of the weather. So, this isn't an easy fix. There is no magic wand to fix this overnight. But what we've done so far...
There is, though, because Macron could, if he wanted to, accept, instead of essentially acting as a lifeboat service and ferrying these boats into British waters until they're then picked up by the Navy, he could turn them round. He could take them back to France.
So what we're doing so far...
Why is he not doing that?
Well, this is a conversation between the Prime Minister and Macron. But what we're doing so far is we've set up the Border Security Command. Now, this, for me, is really important. Combined with that, there's those international relationships being formed with the Iraqis, the Germans, the Italians, the French, Belgium, Dutch, Italians. But the Border Security Command will bring in those extra powers and tools.
Well,
for example,
or is it just
MI5.
another management consultants, reorganisation of how the Home Office works? So far, it seems to be a brass plate.
Let me go a bit further in explaining exactly what that will do and what that means. Because we say counter-terror tools, we say we're going to treat the smuggling gangs like terrorists. Now, I've worked against criminal gangs and against terrorists, so I've seen the difference those powers can make. Now, often it's hard to meet the evidential threshold to charge terrorists and criminal gangs because they're very complex in their operations and often international. Now, if we bring in these disruptive parts of the legislation, for example, stopping bank accounts, ensuring that
these guys don't operate in bank accounts. They're cash in hand. They're criminal gangs. They're not. There's no assets you can seize in this country, and they're not using PayPal.
Let me go further. You can also ensure that they can't speak to certain people, they can't use phones, they can't use the internet. So there's a lot we can do to disrupt. And what that means is if we can't meet the evidential threshold to charge, we can stop these vile criminals from operating in the UK and then working with international partners.
David Lammy today
upstream
coming out and saying we're going to treat criminal gangs like oligarchs and we're going to put Kremlin-style sanctions on them. How many criminal smuggling gang kingpins are operating out of the UK with British bank accounts? It's gibberish, right?
Well, there is a domestic angle. And
how many of this clampdown announced today that sanctioning criminal? How many of these people is this actually going to catch?
Look, I haven't got the full
3?
intelligence picture myself because that's very sensitive. But another part of bringing MI5 into this fight is we can form an accurate intelligence picture. They're the best in the world, without doubt.
But they're already stretched to breaking point, literally breaking point, in the fact that they've got the increased jihadi threat, returning people from the Middle East who are coming here. They've got the rise of the far right. They are already at breaking point.
This is a national security issue. If we've got border security failing, that's a national security.
Sure, but are you going to match it? Are you going to match? I mean, they're going to need more money for this, and so far there has not really been forthcoming.
So look, we've got £180 million being invested in the Border Security Command over the next 2 years, and look, bringing in MI5 to the fight will have an impact because I've seen the difference that these powers makes in the way that they take on terrorists. So bear in mind the way that the MI5 are judged. On their record is stopping things from happening. It's not necessarily putting people in prison as much as that's the end goal. Yeah. And if we can stop these
when will we have a viable... the great mission, Keir Starmer's great missions unveiled late last year or early this year. God, I can't even remember. There was no mention of smashing the gangs as a mission. When will we be able to definitively say the gangs have been smashed?
So actually, just on Keir Starmer's speech at the end of last year, that was a foundation for all of the missions. So actually it's a top priority along with national security.
But when will we be able to say, this has been a success or judge it otherwise?
Well, it's difficult to put a date on it. And the reason for that... and
that's because it's just a 3-word slogan. It's no better than stop the boats, is it?
Commentators love to put a date on something. I get that.
I think voters like to put a date on something.
And I completely understand
Will you smash the gangs by the next election?
If you speak to those operating on the ground, they won't put a date on it. And the reason is because it's a very complex issue. But we'll certainly start having an impact, and I hope to see that this year.
Let's talk about people operating on the ground. The National Crime Agency, an agency dear to your heart, they have said that without a deterrent, as well as all of the other things that Border Force, the Navy and the MI5 and the Home Office are doing, without a credible deterrent, you won't be able to dramatically reduce the number of crossings. What is Labour's deterrent?
I mean, one person said that. And
one person who happened to be a very senior figure in the National Crime Agency.
When we look back at what the Conservatives were telling us was a deterrent. It wasn't. 4 were deported voluntarily.
Yeah,
it would
but
have taken 99 years
offshore
others.
processing is a concept that is not just being looked at by the United Kingdom. The Italians are throwing it, the Danes are looking at it, the Americans are looking at it. Was it a mistake to, in a sort of fit of political pique, scrap the one deterrent option that we had, rather than seeing if you could improve it?
So firstly, we've deported 13,500.
Yeah, foreign criminals who deserve to be deported anyway. They're not deported. That's not an increase in deporting.
That is up 25%.
Yeah,
and,
you've got
and we're
more
up
planes.
19% on foreign criminal deportations. That's really important, because if people are coming here illegally with no right to be here,
of course, but
they need to be deported.
But that's the basics. That is what
that wasn't happening,
that's the baseline of what a government is doing. This is a deterrent, needs to go further than that. What deterrent will Labour have?
So you say it's the basics, but that wasn't happening. So what Angela and Yvette have done in this very short period of time is got the Home Office working. You know, they've got that doing the day job essentially, so that the processing has sped up, so those who shouldn't be here are deported and those that need the help receive it. That is a deterrent, because if you're being deported,
it's clearly not working
because you
though,
shouldn't be here, then that will eventually cut through to those.
If you're going to risk your life and limb and loved ones by getting in a boat, 61 people crossed on what was an ice cold day earlier this year. There is clearly no deterrent if you're willing to risk your life to make that crossing.
So we'll continue.
What are you going
to
do?
the smuggling
It's clearly
gangs.
not working.
Treat them like terrorists. And what I say to those who are, looking to cross is don't risk your life, because you may well die and they're being exploited. And that's why we're taking on the smuggling gangs with such vigour, and we'll continue to go after them. And it will get worse
France
for the
is a
smuggling
safe country.
gangs. It is a safe country.
So why is Macron literally sort of, guiding them onto the boats?
Oh, that's not happening.
Well, it might as well be. They're clearly stopping fewer than that are crossing.
So we have seen a significant amount stopped. The figures did come out last year, but I can't remember off the top of my head what they were, but they were very high. And that is working. Also, if you see what's happening in Belgium, where crossings have reduced significantly, that's because of the work that the British have been doing with them as well. So we look to replicate that in France.
So what are the Belgians doing? Final question. What are the Belgians doing that the French aren't?
Well, it's hard to say exactly, but I know it's using some of our assets to ensure that we're identifying those that are looking to cross.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot of that information is sensitive for obvious reasons, because
Well,
we don't want the smuggling gangs, knowing
so
exactly what we're doing.
A secret plan to smash the gangs is working, but we just might not ever see it.
There's absolutely no secret in the fact that we're bringing in the security services, we're funding the Border Security Command, we're ensuring that there's those international relationships in place to take on the smuggling gangs. No secret there. There'll be tactics and techniques that, of course, shouldn't be talked about openly.
Mike Tapp, MP for Dover.
Thank you.
Rising star, soon to be a minister, no doubt. Thank you for coming on Never Mind the Ballots.
Thank you.
Don't go away, Elon Musk. Even more of it next. Now, Donald Trump is just days away from returning to the White House, but it's his first buddy, Elon Musk, that's continuing to generate headlines around the world. Let's speak to Republican strategist Jennifer Kelly about what's going on. Jennifer, who elected Elon Musk?
Well, look, if you watched Elon Musk and Donald Trump on the campaign trail, it's safe to say that the American people did, by proxy anyway. He does seem to be sort of more of a vice presidential figure, maybe even than J.D. Vance. But by and large, the American people love Donald Trump, but they love Elon Musk just as much. And look, I think Elon Musk has been a game changer already. You look at the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, that they're planning to set up and put into action just less than 2 weeks from now. And the American people love it. The swamp in D.C., maybe they don't love it so much, but the American people, 2/3 of them approve of Donald Trump, and that does include the package deal of Elon Musk.
Are you confident that he's going to make it to his government role, though? He's been pretty manic over the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks. His feed on X has been, picking a fight with the MAGA base about visas for sort of highly skilled workers, and then obviously he's been, throwing his weight around in Britain, demanding our Prime Minister's be jailed. He's sort of meddling in British politics. He's getting involved with the EAFD in Germany. Is he really viable as a sort of actual member of the Trump administration, or does he want to just carry on being a guy who throws rocks from the sidelines?
Well, I think he is quite serious about the, office of Doge and cleaning up American government. But look, Elon Musk's brain is about as vast as the space that his rockets explore. So I think you are going to see him sometimes maybe a little off message. And I come from a press secretary background. That's always
I wouldn't imagine being Elon Musk press secretary is a fun job.
Yes, and look, the White House is going to have their hands full a bit, and having to respond to things and kind of keep him on message. But look, I think they're going to give him a little bit of rein to do what he needs to do and to do what he does best. And I think that's sort of the appeal of him, right? We've had for the last 4 years with Joe Biden, this sort of scripted guy phoning it in from the basement, and I think the American people are sort of feeling refreshed with this sort of off the cuff, no talking points, throw the talking points out the window kind of thing.
It's amusing.
So,
as amusing as it is, though, and it's certainly dramatic to watch. How's Marco Rubio going to be feeling that you've essentially got one wing of the Trump administration freelancing on foreign policy, actively sort of getting involved in elections in Europe, and then you've got the State Department and the Secretary of State trying to run the actual foreign policy. It's not going to last, is it?
Well, that's where I think a bit of the friction may come in. Donald Trump, doesn't like to be outshined. And there are some members of the American press corps trying to, sort of pit the two against each other and say, who's really the more popular guy here? And we know Donald Trump, we love him, but we know he as a successful businessman and New York City developer, he does have that ego of New York with him. But so far, so good. I think Donald Trump is letting Elon Musk have a little bit of a leash. I think it will be very helpful once they get inaugurated and once Elon Musk has a proverbial desk to go to where he can start focusing on the job of the Department of Government Efficiency and less of being, sort of the spokesperson for every department in the administration.
Maggie Haberman, the renowned Trump whisperer, says that the president's been known in the last couple of days to make it clear that he thinks Elon's a bit clingy. He's starting to tire of Musk. Do you think the bromance will last? Do you think they're going to fall out? And, what's that going to look like if they do?
I don't think there will be a fallout. Look, people like Elon Musk, who, he even has said he has a short attention span.
Yeah, well, you could say that. 200 tweets about the British Prime Minister so far.
Yes, and look, it might be a situation where you have his full attention for the first 100 days. Maybe after that, he goes on to do something else. But look, I think this is why the Trump administration and the Trump transition team paired him with Vivek Ramaswamy, because I think once Elon Musk goes on and goes back to the business of, shooting rockets into space, I think Vivek will still be there for the better part of the year. So that remains to be seen. But look, this is what the founding fathers of America intended, right? They intended this robust debate and discussion, much like Parliament over there. Sometimes those arguments scare people. But over here, we like that robust discussion. And like I said, it's okay to go off the talking points a little bit. It's refreshing after 4 years of a very rehearsed Joe Biden. But look, this is what the founding fathers intended. They wanted people to go be successful in life.
Yeah, but they were talking about farmers and blacksmiths and merchants. They weren't talking about billionaire, potential sort of almost oligarchs who now have a seat at the table and have basically paid their way into it.
Well, look, back in the day, you could be a successful blacksmith and then go on to serve your country. It's just sort of a different industry, different realm. You can run Tesla and put rockets into space and still contribute something to the American government that's given you so much. So this is the great experiment, right? And I think if it doesn't end up working out, or if Trump ends up getting annoyed or thinks that someone's too clingy, look, everybody serves at the power of the president and the pleasure of the president. And with the stroke of a pen, he can say, thank you very much for your service. Move on.
It reminds me a little bit of Steve Bannon back in 2016, 2017, when Time made Steve Bannon the Man of the Year and said he was the most powerful man in the White House. Lo and behold, he was out a couple of weeks later. Can we see, is Trump's ego really that sort of still that thin skin that means that, he doesn't like to be overshadowed?
Well, look, there's a book. It's one of my favorite books. It's called The 48 Laws of Power. And guess what law number one is? Don't outshine the boss. Yeah. And that could potentially get Elon Musk in trouble. But look, I think there's enough work to go around for everyone in Washington. It's a mess. And after 4 years of Joe Biden, there's plenty of room for everyone to come in and help clean up the American government. Once that's done, then I think you'll see a little more of the ego sparring. But until then, we have a lot of work to do. Yeah, well, the swamp certainly wasn't drained in the 4 years from 2016. Let's see how he gets on this time, with or without Elon Musk. Jennifer Kelly, Republican strategist, come and see us again soon to let us know how those egos are getting on. Will do. Right, that's your lot for this week. Thank you to all my guests, Chris Philp, Mike Tapp, Jennifer Kelly. Remember to subscribe to us on YouTube. You won't miss a thing. We will be back for Donald Trump's inauguration. You won't want to miss it. See you next time.